What up, Search fam? Sharde here. It's Tuesday. Grab your tea. Let's get started. Hello, my dear ones. Welcome back to the channel. I hope that you are doing well, that your week has gotten off to a smooth start, and that you have been taking care of yourself. Okay, so my pastor preached a sermon on Sunday that was just, it gave me a lot to consider. It gave me a lot to reflect on and to think about. And because she was talking about, she was actually leveling a pretty serious critique over living one's faith and how we other folks and things of that sort. But she said something so deeply profound to me that I am still chewing on it, right? She took this sentiment from another world religion. I'm pretty sure it's one of the East Asian religions. But also it sounds a little to me like something I would read in my favorite Jewish mystics work. But she wasn't sure where she got it from, and I was not able to find the sentiment when I started looking around. At any rate, if I find it, I'll put it in the description box. But she said that there's a sentiment in another world religion that says, bow deeply into the place where someone else has prayed. And to bow deeply because surely the presence of God is there. Y'all. That, and I know exactly why it resonated with me. That's been sticking with me and sitting with me for the past few days, because I have developed a disposition towards how I move about the world, where I am looking for God and to see the presence of the divine in the mundane things, in people, in places where we don't think that God resides. Because I think a lot of times when it comes to our belief, our practice of faith, for some of us, we diminish, we place parameters around what we consider holy, what we consider to be divine, right? And I know that there is a move within the spiritualist communities for discovering and honoring the divine in ourselves. And I'm all about that, because even in the Christian traditions, and y'all, my PhD is in religion, okay? So this is where all this is coming from. I have a PhD in religion. I'm practicing clergy, but also I am a spiritual, strange person. I'm a spiritualist. I practice things, okay? There's a sentiment that comes out of the Christian tradition called, and it's in Latin, it's called the Imago Dei, which is the image of God. And the sentiment is that we essentially embody, we are made in the image of God. And that is something, you find in Genesis, where, God says, let us make man in our image, right? So that is to say that we are deep reflections, we are deep embodiments of the divine spirit, of the universal consciousness of, God, however you construe. And that's something I've always leaned into, because I thought it was just so beautiful to remind oneself that though we inhabit a physical body, we are indeed something entirely more. And so in honoring that in ourselves, I believe that we also must do that in others, and know that when we encounter other people, it can happen in a profound way in which we glimpse, we behold the divine's presence in where that person is or where they have gone from. And so when we think about the idea of bowing deeply into that, there is a surrender that we're talking about, because when you bow in respect. In some cultures, it's just a sign of greeting, it's a sign of respect. But also in religious cultures, to bow oneself, to prostrate oneself, is an act of reverence and of submission to the divine entity, right? So if we take a posture of bowing ourselves to the place where another person exists, it, at least from my perspective, leads us to really looking at every person as embodying the sense of the divine. We can look at every person and see them as embodying the divine when we encounter people and in their practice or in their existence. Like, for me, I think it's important to be open, to leave your senses open to seeing where God is moving in the most unlikely places, because to me that tends to be where blessings reside. And I mean that in terms of things that enrich the soul. And I'm always for that. One of the things that sparked that in me on Sunday after church is my best friend and I took the task of putting these in, right? And sitting there, like, I was handling the front, she was handling in the back. And on the weekends, I have an only old school mandate. So the only music I listen to on the weekends is old school. And on Sundays, I have an old school playlist that's a little bit more mellow. Like on Saturdays, I'd be a little turned, because I'd be cleaning and like picking things up. So I'd be turned with my old school. And then on Sundays, like, I'm still in the old school mood, but it's more of a vibe. And so I was sitting there and I took in the moment, because there was something deeply sacred about it, because I felt the familiarity of generations of Black women who had done the same thing that we were doing right then, sitting in someone's house, doing hair, talking about life, listening to music. We were participating in a ritual that so many Black women before us had done. Not just sort of in a broad sense, but even our own forebears, my grandmother, my aunts, my mom, we had all been in situations where we had been in someone else's house, or in our own house, getting our hair done, talking, music going, life being shared. And to me, in the midst of that, there is something deeply holy, there's something deeply divine about the repetition of the ritual. And I even made a tweet about it, and I'll put the tweet up here. And it was so special. But I think, had I not slowed down enough to observe it as something that I was not only participating in, but something that was deeply familiar, something that was something not only that I had experienced as an observer, but was experiencing within myself, I don't think I would have recognized that as being special. And in that moment, I did bow to the presence of God in something that by and large is not religious or spiritual in any kind of way. Well, what I've noticed in myself is that with a disposition towards bowing deeply into the divine in others and being willing to observe the divine in others, I move through the world with a little bit more softness. I desire to see those things in such a way that, you know, I approach other people with compassion, with softness, because you never know. You never know when you are going to encounter something that deeply moves you. And this happened a lot in my life, where just being open to interacting with people and just like knowing that, you know, the divine is all around me. And I have the opportunity to observe it and to take it into and to experience it if I am open to it. I feel like God honors that and creates more opportunities for me to participate in it. So, I don't know. What do you think? Tell me what you think. When was the last time you actually felt in awe of something or felt like you were experiencing divine presence in some way? I'm curious. I'm very curious, because I know it sounds really woo-woo, but I think there's something to it. At any rate, I love you. Love you so much. I pray that this week you experience the presence of the divine in the most mundane of ways, and that it blows your mind. And I pray peace, I pray light, I pray calmness within your soul. Have a wonderful week. If this is helpful, share it with somebody, because it lets the algorithm know I'm making good content. And I know I'm making good content because we're sharing and we're growing. And I love you. Have a wonderful week. Bye.